Good morning, everyone. One more virtual conference. Hopefully, we are at the end of the series of virtual conferences. Good morning again. And we have talked about automation trends in several of our conferences and roundtables over the last year. So today, I want to talk about the leaders who drive the automation initiatives in companies and the challenges faced by the siloed approach of automation, and some ideas on how you should approach automation using a center of excellence, which is a fluid organization within the company. Automation has evolved significantly from the legacy RPA, which is task-based automation. Today, it uses AI. We're using process discovery tools. We're using document processing. We have low-code, no-code technologies, API, microservices, and so on. So it's really evolved over the last several years. There are three types of leaders who drive automation initiatives in companies. And the way they approach automation is different based on the vantage point these leaders come from. The first is the line of business, be it corporate functions like HR, finance, or business functions like merchandising or claim processing. So these leaders look at automation to get some tactical value. They're looking at reducing costs. They're looking at improving experience. These leaders don't have a lot of expertise in technology, so they rely on partners, they rely on tools providers, and a lot of time they focus on more tactical legacy RPA to get some short-term gains in terms of pressure their business is facing. So that's kind of the first set of leaders who drive automation. The second set of leaders are technology leaders coming from the CIO organization or engineering organization. So these leaders think of, they don't really like RPA. They think of RPA as a Band-Aid on top of the applications they have built over a period of time. So their goal in life is to get into a fully automated enterprise, or what we call as a no-ops enterprise. And these leaders focus largely on platforms. They're looking at how do I now enable all of the individuals in an idealistic world. Everybody becomes a citizen developer in the organization. They want to create an environment where automation organically evolves in the company. But one thing they have no idea about is what to automate. These leaders are horizontal, and they need to really rely on the line of business to understand. So that's a big gap in terms of these organizations. Third are a global business services organization who have talent, who are in charge of both shared services as well as talent hubs across the world. So these leaders have a very good understanding about the process workflow because they have teams which are working from HR, business functions, finance, and so on. They're able to see the process flow across various organizational functions. So they're able to understand what kind of processes which will have the maximum impact from an automation perspective. What they don't have, though, is context, the business context there, because there are two levels separated from the business. And second, they don't have accountability and ownership on these processes because they're structured as a shared services organization within the company. So each of these leaders have a vantage point in terms of how they look at automation. So let's take an example of accounts payable process and how each of these leaders will look at. In a line of business leader, they have an understanding, okay, here is what I need to solve from an accounts payable perspective. They go through a rigorous process to look at where is the ROI they get. ROI to a large extent they measure in terms of cost saving, and look at what is the ease of deployment, the low-hanging processes, and have a process to be able to select the individual processes to be able to automate. If you look at the GBS leaders, they're looking at the overall process across various cross functions and looking at where are the frictions, where are the manual interventions we can remove, and using that, they come up with more a holistic view in terms of what needs to be automated. Versus if you look at the technology organization, they take a technology point of view. They're looking at what are the tools what are the kind of internal capability they have to drive automation. And sometimes they could look at an automation platform which has some capability in accounts payable, or they're looking at an accounts payable specific automation platform. So each of these leaders are trying to solve it in a very different way, and it becomes ineffective in terms of what automation could provide to these organizations. And even today, more and more, there are lots of different external and internal triggers, which is making automation a core for organizations. Let's look at some of the external triggers and why we believe we need to have a different approach to look at automation. And the world has changed in the last 18 months. We have talked about it quite a bit, and we really don't know where we are going to end post-pandemic. What is really the steady state which is going to be? So there are some major macro trends we are facing. One is the rise in interest rates. We are starting to see inflation go up in the US, in other locations, which will result in reduction in the quantitative easing programs as well as increase in interest rate. What would happen over the next 18 months is it'll reduce the amount of capital available. Today, there is significant amount of capital available for companies. It could potentially go down. And companies will start focusing on cash flow, and they will start focusing on profitability. So that's going to be very critical, and they want to really ensure the costs are in control. How do I really need to automate? The second big trend is sustainability and climate change. The younger people in the world are angry. They're angry at the politicians, they're angry at the enterprises, but not doing enough in terms of climate change. And what is going to result in a significant amount of regulation and compliance, which is going to come in across various countries, and it is going to increase the amount of overhead companies are going to face in ensuring they're compliant with various processes across the world. So automation, again, is going to play a big role in reducing this overhead and ensuring organizations are able to react very fast. And third is a trend of great resignation. We haven't seen a talent war like what we are seeing today. The last 6 months has been brutal for companies across the world. The talent acquisition teams are the new sales teams. If you have the right people, your revenue would go. So that's really the reality in the ground. And not just technology roles, even business process roles are very difficult. And to be able to address that and reduce the risk within the company, organizations have to drive automation to improve productivity of their teams. And fourth, we are moving into a hybrid world, right? Your customers, your employees, what the kind of experience they expect even at home, that again is going to be a major driver in terms of driving automation across the company. So in terms of improving productivity, reducing cost, improving experience, and in some level, even using automation as a way to increase market share and potentially gain new revenue. All of this becomes opportunity for companies, and that's very, very exciting. And to be able to do this, organizations have to look at automation largely starting from what are the transformational priorities of the organization, and could be different based on the industry segment a particular company is based on. Take, for example, consumer products. And the pandemic has shown that direct to consumer is going to be very, very important for any consumer brand in the world, right? And to be able to do it, they have to provide a customer experience. They got to have a view of the supply chain very similar to the digital native company like Amazon. When a customer is buying from a consumer brand, their expectation is the whole process of direct to consumer is as seamless as they buy from a company like Amazon. And to be able to drive it, requires a significant foundational changes in technology, and automation will play a significant role in driving that before you're able to go and re-architect the complete technology and rebuild your supply chain. Similarly, in banking, we talked about in manufacturing, we talked about sustainability. In manufacturing industries is going through a massive change in many industries, even in industries like energy. Companies are talking about decarbonization in the next 20 years. and which means that they got to completely change the product which they are selling. They got to change the bill of materials, what they use to build the products. There also circularity becomes very, very critical, where they're able to track the products through the distribution cycle to the customer, back into the organization to recycle and reuse these products. So they need to re-architect and redesign these processes, and automation will play a foundational role in driving that. Again, take an example of healthcare. What vaccines have shown and is preventive care is going to become very, very critical. And hospitals and other healthcare chains are going to come up with differential treatment protocols and cost for folks who are vaccinated and the ones who are unvaccinated. This is just a start of how preventive care is going to become a central part of how healthcare is going to be driven. And again, here, automation is going to play a big role, because you're going to drive complete process re-engineering to get that kind of experience for the patients, which is being serviced by the hospitals. Again, a major change in healthcare. So what we see, automation is going to play not just a role in automating your finance function, automating your HR function, but really playing a role in core function within the organization. To be able to do this is not easy. What we see here, there are few fundamental challenges. The first fundamental challenge, again, I come back to leadership, it's a fixed mindset of today's automation leaders. When today's automation leaders have a view that, and some of them are trained in the legacy RPA, and they think legacy RPA is a solution for all the solutions. So that's one big issue. Second is they would have tried a technology. They would have tried low-code, no-code technology a few years ago, and that might not have worked for several reasons. And in their mind, they think, low-code, no-code technology is really not going to work, because in my previous company 3 years ago, I tried it and it didn't work. So we need more leaders with a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. That's one big challenge. The second challenge is companies look at use cases in silos. Each of them are trying to solve a particular use case, and sometimes different parts of the organizations are trying to solve very similar use cases. Third, there is not enough investment in driving change management within the company. And almost it's an afterthought in terms of what they need to do to be able to drive change. And companies also are limited by the capabilities, what they have in their organization. They look at, okay, here is the capability I have, and what kind of an automation initiative can I drive based on the capability we have in the organization? And finally, to get the right level of investment into automation, not looking at automation as or spend on automation as a cost, but really an investment to get significant ROI for a period of time. Again, a challenge in terms of finding the right budget, because the line of business are deciding, the leaders in line of business are deciding on budgets. They're looking at tactical short-term results from the automation, and that's what they're willing to spend. So these are some of the key challenges which are faced by organizational leaders who are driving automation. However, we are starting to see some interesting case studies which are emerging. You take an example of a company like Pfizer. The GBS leader is the automation Cesar in the company, and the leader worked, evaluated tools, built the business case, and got the budget approved from the CFO. That's like the first step. Then created a center of excellence, which is largely a decentralized, a federated model of center of excellence, which allowed and then worked very closely with the technology organization to build the technology infrastructure and the orchestration layer to be able to drive automation. And they evolved from driving a legacy RPA, then using AI, then using intelligent document processing, using low-code, no-code technologies, and creating citizen developers within the organization, and taking on core processes for automation rather than corporate functions. Today, the company has, due to the partnership between the global business services, technology, and line of business, to drive over 450 bots, which is created, freed up about 150,000 FTE hours in a very, very short period of time. So there are examples of organizations which are able to solve the automation challenges I talked about. To be able to drive the automation challenge, there are 5 key questions companies have to solve. First is how do you prioritize the use cases for automation? And if you look at this, if you look at the slide, we have rated each leader's capability in terms of answering that question effectively. And we believe that GBS leaders are in the right position to answer it because they have a view of the overall journey, be it an employee journey or a customer journey, which happens to the organization. They're able to see the process through multiple silos of the organization, whereas a line of business have a view only on the process which they focus on for the organization. So having a partnership with the GBS leaders and the line of business leaders will allow us to prioritize the right use cases. Second is what is the technology which could be used, and technology leaders are the right in driving that. A lot of times the line of business chooses that in a very tactical way on what is relevant for them at that particular time. But a lot of time the technology they choose, it's not suitable for an integration with the rest of the digital transformation infrastructure of the organization. So having a tight partnership with the technology organization, decide, hey, what is the technology infrastructure, the tools, the platform we need, not just today, but for where we want to go in the next few years. Can we build that infrastructure and evolve to the ideal scenario? That is, again, very, very critical. Third is talent strategy. Here, we believe Global Business Services is in a great position because they have global talent hubs and they have partnerships with technology service providers who have the right talent across different locations. So the key decision here is, do we do it internally? Do we outsource? If you do it internally, which location do we use the automation center of excellence? Do we do it in the US, near the headquarters, or do we use one of the low-cost talent hubs to be able to drive automation? So a lot of this automation initiative based on the talent war is directly based on the talent which you have access to, both internally as well as externally. And fourth, frankly, on change management, none of the leadership have a very good handle of how to drive change, but having a good understanding in terms of how do we bring in a sense of urgency? How do we communicate effectively across different business functions, different levels of the hierarchy? How do we show early wins to show a success? All of this becomes very critical in driving change. And finally, finding the right sponsor. You can drive tactical automation by having the line of business function invest in it. But a lot of time the ROI is tactical. What we need is corporate budgets, corporate investments, which is looking slightly long-term and looking at ROI from different dimensions, so that over a period of time, once your automation gets to steady state, you can start charging back to the line of business based on the kind of automation and value you bring in for different line of business. So having a very strong corporate budget is going to be very critical to be successful in driving automation. And to drive this, like you said, the three individuals, when they come together, and we've seen so many Marvel movies over the last few years, and when they bring in the superpowers together, you create this new superhero who's able to solve a lot of these problems. Similarly, how do we now bring these personas of the line of business, the IT organization, global business together to be able to select the right use case, define the technology infrastructure, deploy the automation, drive change and governance? It's going to be very, very important. And to drive this, we believe you need what we call as a fluid center of excellence, right? Many companies build center of excellence, which is fixed based on a fixed set of capability. What we do need, though, is a fluid and it's just dynamic and evolving center of excellence, which is adjusting itself and building capability and a new organization muscle based on the transformation programs of the organization. So there are about 6 building blocks for these centers of excellence. First is, how do you prioritize the right use cases and business outcomes? Here, you need the center of excellence to have the capability. Both capability could be internal, could be with third-party partners, to drive a top-down workshops to understand what is required. It needs the capability to use tools to drive process discovery, to understand which process will have the highest impact. We'd also have to have capability to drive bottoms up initiatives like hackathons with the line of business users to understand what are the key business problems you're trying to solve and what are the kind of outcomes we can provide. That is the first building block. Second building block, to be able to track progress and more importantly, track ROI. ROI is not just about cost saving. ROI here is about improvement in customer experience. It's about driving increase in market share. It's about driving new revenue. Looking at ROI holistically and coming up with the value from the automation programs is very, very critical. Third, the Center of Excellence should have the capability to map the journey map, be it the employee journey or a customer journey or a supplier journey, understand the bottlenecks and see how do you remove the frictions to make that experience seamless. And the Center of Excellence should be able to orchestrate capability. They might have partnership. There are 1,500 automation platform and tools company today. How do you understand what capability is available in the market? How do you have a string of pearl strategy to have the right capability with the tools and platform providers, as well as light capability from the technology service providers who can be an implementation partner for this? And also, how do you be the agent of creating an automation first culture within the company? And finally, the building block is focus on governance. Automation, it's not a tactical short-term initiative of the company. Automation is a way of running your organization. So having very strong governance capability is very critical for organization to be successful. So these are the kind of key capabilities and building blocks of what we call as a fluid center of excellence for automation. And these are some of the roles which companies have to have across change management, business roles, IT roles, as well as automation roles. So more importantly, these are roles what the COE should have. More importantly, the success of the automation initiative is squarely relying on the leader, he or she or they, who drive the automation initiative within a company. And we observed and analyzed leaders who drive such initiative, and the ones who act as corporate entrepreneurs within an organization are the ones we have seen succeed in driving that automation initiative. For example, these are some of the traits we have seen in leaders who have been very effective. One of the key things we look at is relentless persistent. If you're a startup, you're raising funds, all you need is one okay from an investor, you're done, you get the funding. But if you're working in a large enterprise, you want to bring in any initiative, be it automation or other initiatives, you need to get an okay from everyone in the hierarchy. If one person says no, you go back to your drawing board. So you need leaders who are relentless persistent. You need leaders who are willing to take risk and take accountability in terms of driving that. Third, you need leaders who have very strong understanding of how the company makes money. Like many times, leaders look at it in silo. They don't really understand the organizational capability in terms of what's your business like, how you make money. So that financial and business acumen becomes very important. And you need leaders who are influencers, not just influencing through the hierarchy, but are they able to influence across the breadth and depth of the organization, above them and below them, and being a global influencer become very, very critical. And a leader which is also driving change, and a leader who is able to develop talent. Many times, like we are in the middle of a talent war, a lot of this we can't hire laterally and build that capability. You need a leader who can build this capability within the organization by developing over a period of time. So a lot of this become very, very critical traits of a successful automation leader. If an automation leader is able to even have 70% of these traits, we believe that the automation journey of the company will be truly successful, and automation will become one of the core of the transformation levers of the organization. Again, thanks everyone for joining the session, and all the very best in your automation journey over the next several years. Thank you.